friends, my name is Katie. Welcome back to my channel, Life Between Words, or welcome if you're new. Today I wanted to do a book recommendations video. I haven't done one of these in a while. And I wanted to talk about books that deal with the theme of hope. And I was thinking about this because today, the day that I'm filming, is the first Sunday in Advent. Advent marks the beginning of the Christmas season. In the Christian calendar, Advent is the time leading up to Christmas. It's a time of joyful expectation and waiting for the coming Savior. So if you ever have seen an Advent wreath, there's 4 candles and then the center candle. Every candle represents something about the Advent season, and the first candle, so the one that was lit today, was the candle that represents hope. So that's what I'm going to talk about today. I'm going to talk about books that deal with themes of hope. None of the books that I'm going to talk about are religious. This was just an opportunity to talk about books that deal with hope, and I thought that it was very appropriate given the season that we're in, just in general. One of the things that I think marks a hopeful story is that there has to be tragedy. Hope exists when things are not as they should be, because hope is the wish for things as they should be, not for things as they are. So most of the stories that I'm going to mention aren't happy, but they have this element of hope in the midst of it, this longing for a world that is put to right. The first book that I'm going to talk about is actually a series of books. It's the Chaos Walking Trilogy by Patrick Ness. The first book is called The Knife of Never Letting Go. I'm only going to talk about the premise of the first book because it gets so much more complex as the story goes along, and it ends very dramatically, and there's lots of twists and turns that this book takes. It follows our main character, Todd, who lives on another planet. This new planet has been colonized. It starts when Todd turns 13, I think. He starts out a young teenager, and in the town that he grew up in, there are no women. The town is populated only by men, and the men can all hear each other's thoughts. There's lots of secrets about what happened to the women, and it's filled with lies and deception and lots of twists and turns. Todd ends up leaving the town and meeting a girl, and they join up together, and that's kind of when the world becomes bigger for Todd and things become more complex. There's lots of evil in this world, there's lots of evil characters, and this book is about so much. In the midst of the tragedy, there's so much hope to cling to, and a lot of it is about Todd trying to cling to that hope. The writing style is not for everyone. For me, it worked, but I will say that Todd is illiterate and uneducated, and so that's the way he talks, and that's the way the book is written. But it works. For me, it works because that's who Todd is, and he's the one narrating the story. It's a great series. It's one of my favorite YA series that I've ever read. I love it so much. The next book I want to talk about, I don't have because I lent it out to a friend, and I haven't gotten it back yet. And it's a book by Gary Schmidt. I've talked about Gary Schmidt on my channel before. He's one of my very favorite middle grade authors. He's sort of upper middle grade, almost YA, but he's usually shelved in the middle grade section, not in the YA section. The book I want to talk about is called Okay for Now. Okay for Now follows one of the characters that we meet in the Wednesday Wars named Doug Switek. In this book, Doug and his family have moved away from the town that the Wednesday Wars takes place in to a new town, and Doug is trying to establish his life in this new town. But we learn from the very beginning that Doug's family life is really sad. He lives in an abusive home. It's also about a small town and some of the things that can happen in a small town, like rumors, and how that can shape your existence. But it is also filled with really wonderful, lovely characters, including a librarian that introduces Doug to art. And as in all of Gary Schmidt's books, amidst Doug's tragic, heartbreaking life, there's so much hope, and it ends with such a silver lining. There's always goodness to cling to in the midst of the world that's falling apart around him, and not even just around him, but falling apart inside of him and directly affecting him. It's my favorite Gary Schmidt book. I love it. I highly recommend it, and please ignore the awful cover because it's not a good cover and it does not reflect the inside of the book at all. So this is one case in which reading a book by its cover is not a good idea. And I know that as bookish people, sometimes we all struggle with that, including me, but this is a wonderful, wonderful book. I've mentioned this before, but one of my favorite subgenres, and a subgenre that I'd like to read more of because I actually haven't read a ton of this, is post-apocalyptic / apocalyptic fiction. And one of my favorite books in that genre is Station 11 by Emily St. John Mandel. As with most apocalyptic, post-apocalyptic fiction, it deals so much with hope because the world has basically come to an end. Humanity is struggling to survive, and one of the things that happens when humanity is struggling to survive is learning how to hold on to hope. In this book, the apocalypse happens because of a pandemic, and the story follows several different timelines, some before the pandemic, some during the pandemic, and some post-pandemic. The main thread of hope is found in the post-pandemic world, although I think you can find it in all of the storylines because they're all trying to cling to hope. They're all trying to survive. If you don't have hope, there's not a lot to live for. This book explores that really, really well. The next book I want to mention is called The Power of One by Bryce Courtney. This is about a little boy named Pike who's growing up in South Africa, sort of at the very, very beginning of apartheid. He's not just dealing with sort of this budding apartheid world, but also post-World War II, and it's also dealing with tensions not only between the black South Africans and the white South Africans, but also between the Dutch South Africans and the English South Africans. And this book is really kind of a coming-of-age novel about Pike learning to navigate his way through this world, overcome these tensions, befriend these different groups of people, and in his own small and sometimes big way, combat the divides that he faces. So in order to do that, he needs to find a lot of inner strength and hope in coming to grips with these things that he faces. I would recommend this as a book filled with lots of hope. And lastly, and probably the most thematically direct book, and one in which I just mentioned in my most recent tag, is The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe by C.S. Lewis. In the start of this book, when Lucy first walks through the wardrobe, she's confronted with a world that is always winter and never spring. And she finds these people, particularly Mr. and Mrs. Beaver and Mr. Tumnus, who are waiting for the arrival of Aslan, who will herald in spring. Aslan is the coming hope for the Narnians. And the hope found in this book is the hope of Aslan coming and returning Narnia to the way that it should be, and to release it from the grips of the White Witch. It's very rich in theme because while it's not maybe a direct allegory, it does tend to have a lot of allegorical elements to it, and not only that, but it's just full of so much wisdom and quotability. So I had to mention The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe. So those are 5 books that I think demonstrate hope in really profound ways. Some may be more direct, some may be a little bit harder to find when you read the books, but in all of them, hope is there. Hope is what drives the story forward and motivates the people in the books. I hope that the beginning of the Christmas season is going wonderfully for you, and I will be back soon with both my wrap-up and my TBR for December. I can't believe we're already there, and I will talk to you all later. Bye! I'd really, really love to know what some of your favorite books are that deal with the theme of hope, because as I was looking at my shelves, I think I can find hope in a lot of books, but I'd love to have more for my to-be-read list, because hope is something that I cling to when I'm dealing with the darkness around me, and sometimes having a book to read with hope in it is the best way for me to remember that there is always hope to cling to.